So in this video we're going to explain how to use the SAM API, which is the SAM application programming interface. We just call it the SAM search tool. So sam.gov, the official website for the System for Award Management, offers an API, which is a programming interface that allows us to add what's in their database and their search functionality to our website. So you see they have here, if you go to sam.gov and click on search records, there's a search by DUNS number. There's also an advanced search, disaster response, cage code. Also, if you visit the homepage of sam.gov, you'll see that they have a status tracker. So we're going to open the status tracker in a different link. We're going to open search records here. And we're going to go back here, and I think I have a DUNS number saved. Okay, so the way our SAM search works is if you enter a DUNS number in this box, which will only be done in the event that you need to specifically retrieve a registration, like after a phone call ends, or if for some reason when the phone call came through the registration didn't come up, you would ask for the customer's DUNS number. There's a number of different search criteria. You can search by cage code, which is a different alphanumeric 5-character number assigned by the IRS. Some people use their cage code. Most people use their DUNS number. Primarily, they're going to use their DUNS number. DUNS numbers are 13 digits long. Technically, most people go by the 9-digit DUNS number. So this DUNS plus 4, for instance, would be if I wanted to search for this DUNS number. The 13-digit variant of it has 4 zeros at the end. Nobody really uses those, but just in case you see it listed somewhere, that's what that is. That's the 13-digit variant. All 13-digit ones are just the 9-digit DUNS number plus 4 zeros at the end. What they did is they started adding the 4 zeros to the end in anticipation of running out of DUNS numbers and needing the extra 4 numbers to be able to create new ones. It hasn't happened yet, so we usually just use this DUNS number one. There's a number of other different search criteria which you can go by. You guys pretty much won't use anything besides the DUNS number, the DUNS plus 4, business name, and cage code. So these top 4 entries right here. DUNS plus 4 we very rarely use. Cage code we very rarely use. Business name, sometimes if the person doesn't know their DUNS number, we'll look it up. The phone system's configured in a way where people shouldn't be able to pass through for the most part without having a valid DUNS number. As you see over here, there's an inactive checkbox that'll allow you to search for people who have a registration that's already expired. Now, most of the time this takes place automatically. What will happen is if you just put in a DUNS number here and you click search and it's inactive, it'll first try to search the active database and then it'll try to search the inactive. If you know it's inactive, if the customer informs you and for whatever reason just putting it in here and clicking search doesn't work, then you can check the inactive box. So we'll just do a search here. And this results page is going to come up. So this results page just gives us some cursory information, including the expiration date, the current status, and then down here it'll have the legal business name. Sometimes it includes a doing business as name, which could be 2 different names. Sometimes a business will have a second name to it. It has the address, their DUNS number. As you can see, the DUNS plus 4 is just the extra 13 digits that would go on the end if we were doing a 13-digit DUNS. Here's their cage code, which is a 5-character alphanumeric code. The IRS assigns these. And then there's their status, expiration date, and do they have delinquent federal debt. This part necessarily is not applicable for what you guys will be doing. It's just included in there because it's some of the information that can be returned, and we return all of the information in the event that we might need it someday. So something to keep in note too is when you search by DUNS number, these 9-digit DUNS numbers are specific to entities. So like Personal Genome Diagnostics Inc. will go by this DUNS number only, but in some instances a cage code will return more than one DUNS number. So a good example of this is pharmaceutical companies. Big pharmaceutical companies sometimes have multiple subsidiary companies, or they'll own 2 or 3 other companies under them. So the parent company would have a cage code that would, if you searched it, return back 2 or 3 subsidiary companies. So it would have a few different results listed under it, and you would see different business names and different DUNS numbers for each one. So that's why we primarily log everything and search by the DUNS number, because it is the only truly unique piece of information on the SAM registration that it's impossible for it to have a duplicate. So then we're going to go over here to view details. Oops. Now view details just shows us their full registration info. Looks like my internet's having some trouble here. Okay, so now this page is a combination of the SAM search results, like their registration, all their registration info, and the SAM status checker. So this part right here is going to be the SAM status checker. So if we go click check status on the sam.gov website, it brings us to this tool where we can paste in a DUNS number, click search, it'll say processing, and it gives us up to the minute, up to date information. This information is extremely fast. It changes, I think, every 60 seconds. So if there was some kind of registration change, we would see it. Now having the status checker or status tracker embedded into our search results is something that none of our competitors have. We're the only one with a direct connection directly to SAM's database that allows us to see this information in real time. These various sections are the segments of their profile. Each registration is broken down into core data, assertions, reps and certs, points of contact, submit, processing, active, of just the last 3 steps of the completion. So some of these registrations, you'll see assertions and reps and certs are grayed out. They don't have a green checkbox. That's just because those ones are currently being either worked on, or because they're somebody that's applying for grants, so they don't really need to say what they're doing. Assertions and reps and certs are for mostly contract people. So if you see any kind of organization where these 2 are grayed out, it's likely that they're in there for federal assistance or grants rather, as opposed to contracts. It's not necessarily important. The only time that we use the status tracker, and we can pull up an example of this, is when a customer calls in, if their registration is currently undergoing some kind of change. Maybe they went in and tried to update it themselves, or maybe it's not complete yet. If it's in a submitted or work in progress status, that status tracker will show the various levels of completion that are left, and it will give you a help message as well. The various levels of completion are sometimes important. Like this one will say status submitted. Is now being processed. Registration is pending assignment or validation of a cage code. This is the IRS assigned cage code. It can take 10 business days, blah, 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 right? So it shows you that they made it through completing all of these portions of their profile. They made it to the submission step. They submitted it, and it's now currently processing. So this will become a check mark, and then active will become a green check mark once it's done processing. Now, another example of this where it would be important is, like I said, the other situation, which is a status of work in progress. And if we can pull one up, that would be nice. There we go. So this would be a status of work in progress. Now when they're work in progress, that just means that they're currently working on getting through the steps of completion, whether that be for the first time or because they're renewing. And you'll see they managed to fill out their core data and their assertions, but they have not made it through the reps and certs segment of their registration yet. And it gives these help messages that we use sometimes to read back to the customer. Your taxpayer information was validated by the IRS. Continue your SAM registration by completing the reps and certs section. So, if the customer called in with this circumstance, I would say I would see that your registration is currently a work in progress. I would ask them if somebody, either them or somebody else at their organization or business, had tried to log in and complete this registration. And usually they tell me, yeah, we tried to renew it ourselves, had some difficulty, or I'm not sure, or whatever. But so we'll tell them what's going on with it. Say, we see that you made it most of the way through the process. Currently, right now, you need to finish your reps and certs, and give them the help message. I can see here that your taxpayer information has been violated by the IRS. To finish your registration, you're just gonna have to complete the last 2 sections. If you'd like us to do that for you, we can. Something of that nature. So, the majority of the time, what you're going to see is registrations come up where they're in an active status. Once in a while, once in a great while, you'll see a submitted or a work in progress, and then we can use the status tracker for that. Now, we also use the status tracker for ourselves too. It does give some good information about the expiration dates in big text at the top, as well as their status and their name. Very easy to spot when the phone call first comes in, as this page that we're looking at now will be the page that pops up on your screen during a phone call. Now we use this too when we do the actual renewals. We'll go back and use the status tracker to make sure that when we submit the renewal, the status will change to submitted, and then it'll stay that way for anywhere from an hour to 48 hours, and then it'll stay active again, and this date will update. So I mean, we use it in-house as well, but definitely something very useful on the phone. If we move down, you can see their expiration date is listed here. Now the reason for having this block of dates here is mostly for the phone sales. You know, when the customer calls in, we'll say, hey, we see you have an expiration date of 11/4/2017, which is going to be in 9 months and 15 days. The registration date, this is going to be the date in which they created their registration for the first time. So like I can see that this person entered the system in 4/2/2013. So they had to have renewed several times, considering these only last for a year. So they renewed several times over the course of the last few years. Now, whether they did it with another firm or they did it themselves, I'm not sure. But usually when you see somebody with a registration date of anything less than 1 year from today, then you know that that person is probably going to ask the question of why should I have to pay this time as opposed to previous times. And that's something we'll go over too, but you know, that's why we use this piece of information for to determine if this person may have updated their profile for free in the past. Then there's the last update date. So the last update date would be the last time somebody did something to the registration. Sometimes I throw this in here as a piece of filler information just to keep the person engaging me in the conversation. I say, hey, I see that your registration was recently updated in 11/4/2016. This can also be an indicator too, if the last update date is within 6 months of today's date, that their password is still valid. So with SAM.gov registrations, you have to reset your password every 180 days for security reasons, something that we're going to go over in a future video too. But you know, using this, sometimes you can see like if they had recently updated in the last month, then you know there's a good chance that they logged in, had to reset their password. Now their password is going to be good for another 6 months. The 3-year renewal date is going to be their expiration date plus 3 years. So if they go with the 3-year option, you can say, you know, if you decide to go with the 3-year option, your new renewal date will be 11/4/2020. If you decide to go with the 5-year renewal option, your new expiration date is going to be 11/4/22. And then we're going to go through these options here in a second, but I just want to skip ahead and move down to profile notes. Profile notes, when we go to do a renewal, if somebody says I need to update my point of contact information, you could leave a note here saying this customer wishes to update point of contact information to reflect the following changes, and you can word it however you want, but for instance, let's take a look here at the entity overview. So this person has Mr. William Stevens listed in here. So we'll say William Stevens change to John Smith. This is just an example note. Obviously, you might want to write up something a little bit more substantial or easy to understand. That was kind of a crappy off the top of my head example. And then the page will refresh and you'll see the note here, and it'll also pop up in the employee notes section for us to see later. When we go to do the renewal, we'll know that we need to update something here. We're going to go down to entity overview. This section is probably one of the more important ones. So down here it'll show you the purpose of registration, all awards usually is people seeking contracts. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's only contracts, but probably 80% of the time it's contracts. We'll say 75-80% of the time. If it says federal assistance or anything besides all awards, chances are they're in there for grants, or they're you know, like a police department, fire department, public school, something of that nature. Corporate structure information is a big selling point. So on some of these registrations, and we'll just take a second here to find one where the corporate structure information reflects something other than that. Usually, most of the time, the corporate structure information is going to have a number of things listed under it, and these are called set-aside codes. So what set-aside codes do is when somebody goes to create their registration, there is a number of programs available from the government that allow particular qualified businesses and organizations to receive particular grants and contracts. For instance, this person just has some kind of generic ones on here too, but Service disabled veterans get access to contracts that are set aside by the government specifically for them. So what will happen is the government will put this contract forth, and they'll mark it as something, it's eligible for service disabled veterans or economically disabled or economically disadvantaged woman-owned small business, which is one of them. This one, just for instance, says woman-owned business. We'll pull a couple more of them up and see if we can find one that has a few more codes than that. Some of them will have 1, some of them will have 10. We use it as a selling point anyways. So most of our competitors, see, this one actually has veteran-owned business and service-disabled veteran-owned business. So if there was any contract set aside for a veteran-owned business or a small economically disadvantaged business or anything of that nature, the set-aside codes will be listed here, and that person would be eligible to apply for them and actually be able to bid and receive them. We use this as a selling point. For instance, if there is set-aside codes that make sense, like limited liability company doesn't really make sense to say for a discount scenario, neither does for-profit organization. If it says something other than just corporate structure type stuff like veteran-owned or service-disabled veteran-owned, our competitors offer 2 different prices based off of these set-aside codes. Sometimes they'll give non-profits a discount. So what I say is, even though we really are charging $300 for 3 years and $500 for 5 years, I'll tell them it would normally be $600 for 3 years and $1,000 for 5 years, but they're going to receive a 50% reduction in those fees because they're a veteran-owned business, which is just a sales tactic. What we do is we double down these numbers and tell them that they're receiving a discount, so they think that the price that we normally would charge them is actually a pretty good deal. And these corporate structure information set-aside codes are very useful in that sense. Most of the time, nonprofits are a good example. It'll say nonprofit organization. If you don't see any here that makes sense, then what you normally do is just tell them that because they're a small business, marked so from the Small Business Administration, that we're going to give them a discount. And those sales tactics are something we're going to cover at a later time. I just wanted to explain how the information here in this SAM search pulls back and actually ties into our sales process. So we're just going to return here to the original registration right here. Moving down, like I said, entity structure has delinquent federal debt, not necessarily that important. Neither is the doing business as name. The legal business name is what matters the most. That's the name that the entity is actually registered under. We confirm that during the phone calls just to make sure that the phone system is working correctly. Is this Personal Genomes Diagnostic Inc.? The person says yes. Then we have their DUNS number and their cage code, and then their point of contact information. The point of contact information is important because when we go to send the renewal email to actually get them to go through the sales checkout process, we usually confirm if this email is correct. So if the person says that they want to go ahead with it, I say, okay, I'm looking here at a point of contact for William Stevens. Is that you? They either say yes or no, and even if they say no, if the email seems generic, like it says info@personalgenome.com as opposed to W. Stevens, I'll ask them if it's a good email. But I always try to check and see if one of the emails listed under this point of contact is theirs and valid. If it is a valid email that they can check now, or it's theirs and they're good to go, we just copy and paste it and bring it up to the box up here for the renewal email. If not, we'll just get an email from them that works, something that they can check currently. Entity records is mostly a repetition of previous information. Core data is where we pull those dates up top that were in the center column. We pull those from here. It'll show the business start date, when their fiscal year runs out, their legal business name. Sometimes it has their website. And then here's all the different dates. Renewal date being the last time that they renewed. I think we call it update date above because that's technically what it is. Those are expiration, activation, submission, and registration date. Their physical location, their mailing address, which is sometimes separate from a physical location. Cage code, and here it says N-Cage. N-Cage is for international businesses. Businesses located outside of the United States of America will not have a cage code, they'll have an N-Cage. And then we have ACAS information is only for people that do architecture and engineering. They have a specific section for them, so this one it does not appear. General information, country of incorporation, correspondence flag, business types. So most of this is, the corporate structure information about how they're set up and so on and so forth, as well as financial information. Do you accept credit cards, which means government credit cards as a form of payment? Do you have delinquent debt? Do you have any known exclusions, cage codes? does this entity authorize the information to be displayed in the public SAM search? Yes, it'll always say yes, otherwise they wouldn't have appeared here because we're utilizing the public SAM search feed. Down here, this is important. This section is pretty important, not so much to our sales process directly, but indirectly, I would say. So this is going to be a huge thing too when we're doing the, I'm just going to close some of these tabs, when we're doing the government contracting. So their assertions is what they do. These NAICS codes are going to be listed in the terminology document cheat sheet thing that I'm going to make up, but it stands for North American Industry Classification Code. They can have one or they can have many. If they have more than one, usually one of them will say is primary yes, and the other ones will say is primary no. Same thing for PSC codes, product service codes. So these North American Industry Classification Codes are the assertions that they're putting forth that their business does. So for instance, this business does research and development in biotechnology. This could say carpentry, it could say painting, it could say manufacturing, it could say anything. There's a whole bunch of different ones applicable for all different industries, but this is pretty much where they state what they do. If they manufacture some kind of product or offer a service that could be considered similar to a product, then it'll be under a product service code. It'll have a similar format to this. Disaster response information indicates whether or not they're willing to be a disaster response contractor. This only applies mostly to like carpenters, plumbers, people that would be responsible for coming to the scene of a disaster to try to do cleanup or repair efforts. Reps and certs. This is another section you guys won't necessarily use, but we included it in here because it is part of the information that got returned. These FAR responses stand for Federal Acquisition Regulations. When they go to do their SAM registration, they need to check off yes or no to a number of questions listed under the Federal Acquisition Regulation guidelines for this particular year. So these are just their answers to these questions. They're really important to the compliance of the SAM registration. So even though we don't use this in the sales process necessarily, if people ask why they have to pay, we can tell them that, you know, FAR responses and FAR questions change on a regular basis, sometimes multiple times a year, and failure to be compliant with the Federal Acquisition Regulation or incorrectly filling out or answering one of these questions could lead to a $10,000 fine per question. Very, very important that that gets done correctly. And down here is the point of contact information. There's multiple different points of contact: the government business point of contact, electronic business point of contact, past performance business point of contact, and then it goes into the alternatives for all of these segments. I can briefly explain the differences here, even though most of the customers don't. Government business point of contact would be the primary contact for this registration for the government to engage in business with them, whether that be contracts, grants, anything at all. That's the primary contact. Now, if that contact isn't going to take place via the typical route, say phone or fax or particular like mail, the electronic business point of contact would be, you know, who to talk to if these things are being engaged in online. Usually it's the same person. Past performance point of contact would be the point of contact for whoever it is at the organization responsible for providing the information about what past engagements this business has had with the government. So usually they're all the same person. Sometimes they're multiple. And a lot of the times the alternatives, if there's two business owners or there's a business owner and then like a manager that's responsible for the SAM registration, they'll be in the alternative. Sometimes all of these are filled out. So it's pretty much the rundown of the information returned from the SAM API over here. A good parting note to know is if you need to search by business name ever, you need to add a plus sign between the words. So for instance, let's just do a quick search here and try to find a business name where this would be applicable. Alright, so Windows Management Experts. We'll go back to the SAM search. I'm going to see how many results come back under Windows and Management. Oh, yeah, every now and then, sometimes that might happen where it says no results. It usually is because you didn't check the correct thing over here. Like for instance, I had DUNS number selected instead of business name. Sometimes it happens anyways. It's very unlikely that it'll happen without you making a mistake, but sometimes it does. You know, just go back and try it again and it'll work. So anyways, as you can see, a number of results came back here, and those results don't always have, this business happened to be number 2 on the results, but they don't always have you know, the words right next to each other, or sometimes it didn't even have the words at all. And what this is it's looking for the words business or management to be included in the business name. What you want to do to be able to search this as a, you know, an actual business name layout, like in a phrase, is add a plus symbol between the words, and this will allow you to search for that exact phrase. Once again, I fucking did not did not click business name. Fantastic. There we go. So now if I search by business name, it pulls up Windows Management Experts Inc., the business I was looking at. So you just want to add pluses between the words as opposed to spaces. That's pretty important. It was pretty important for that. So anyways, that wrapped up the SAM API rundown, how to use the SAM search. I'm going to end this video, and we're going to move on to what to do once we have the SAM search up on our page.